Imagine doing everything right, building a business from the ground up, playing by the rules of a conservative society, and earning the absolute respect of your community. Now, imagine waking up one morning to find that the largest bank in the country has decided your life's work is merely an asset to be liquidated. This isn't just a story about banking. This is a story about the psychology of face. In 2001, a $10 billion battle broke out that would change the skyline of Singapore forever. Most people think big business is about spreadsheets, interest rates, and cold, hard logic. But the war for Overseas Union Bank proves it's actually about something much more volatile: human ego and cultural honor. By the end of this, you'll understand why a single arrogant report from a Wall Street giant didn't just cost a merger, it cost millions of dollars in penalties and fundamentally altered the DNA of Asian banking. If you think the highest bidder always wins, you're about to see why you're dead wrong. The real question isn't who had the most money, it's who understood the human brain better. To understand why this war started, you have to understand the Bonsai trap. In the late 1990s, the Singapore government realized something terrifying. Their local banks were safe, but they were small. In a globalized world, small is a death sentence. The Monetary Authority of Singapore dropped a bombshell. They signaled that the local market only had room for 2 mega banks. The message was clear: consolidate or perish. Lee Hsien Loong, then chairman of the MAS, used a metaphor that sent shivers through the financial district. He called the local banks bonsai plants, stunted by the small pots they grew in. To survive the coming global storm, they needed to break the pot and find a bigger one. This created a state of controlled tension across the entire sector. Every CEO went to sleep wondering, am I the predator or am I the prey? The viewer might expect this to be a simple story of a government-mandated merger, but I'm going to show you how a friendly visit and a hostile piece of paper turned a mandated merger into a bloodbath. The peace shattered on June 22, 2001. DBS, the big brother of Singaporean banking, launched a surprise, unsolicited bid for OUB. They offered 9.4 billion Singapore dollars in cash and shares. In the polite world of Singaporean finance, the word unsolicited is a hand grenade. It means a hostile takeover. DBS was looking at the map of Asia and saw a Malaysian-sized hole in their portfolio. OUB had 12 branches in Malaysia. DBS had almost none. To DBS, this was a logical, mathematical necessity. It was a software update for the Singaporean economy. But for the founder of OUB, George Lien Ying Chow, this wasn't a strategic alignment. It was an ambush. Imagine spending 66 years of your life building an institution, only to have a younger, state-linked giant try to snatch it from your hands while you're still sitting in the chairman's office. DBS had the math. They had the scale. They had the government's blessing. But they made a fatal error that most people don't see until it's too late. While DBS was popping champagne, a quiet storm was brewing at United Overseas Bank. The legendary Cho Yaw, the tiger of UOB, was watching. He didn't just see a business opportunity, he saw a psychological opening. Cho Yaw knew George Lien. He knew the OUB board. And he knew that OUB was currently under attack. On June 29th, just 3 hours before a major industry speech by the MAS, Cho Yaw struck back. UOB announced a counteroffer of 10 billion Singapore dollars. But here is the first payoff. The price wasn't the most important part of the offer. If you think an extra 600 million Singapore dollars won the deal, you're missing the point. Cho Yaw didn't just outbid DBS, he outmaneuvered them emotionally. While DBS sent lawyers and dry press releases, Cho Yaw sent himself. He understood a fundamental truth. In Asian business, the shortest distance between 2 points isn't a straight line, it's a personal connection. This sounds counterintuitive, but Cho Yaw won the biggest deal of his life by being the nicest guy in the room. He didn't just issue a press release. He personally visited the 90-year-old George Lien. He didn't lead with synergies or market capitalization. He led with legacy. He spoke to Lien as a peer. He offered Lien the title of Honorary Life Counselor of the new combined bank. He promised to nurture the entrepreneurial spirit that Lien had spent his life cultivating. We gave Lien a way to sell his bank without losing his dignity. He gave him face. Contrast this with the DBS approach. DBS was treating the takeover like a clinical operation. UOB was treating it like a marriage. This emotional rhythm shifted the entire narrative. DBS was the cold corporate raider, and UOB was the friendly family savior. But why did DBS fail so spectacularly, despite having the backing of the establishment? This is where the story takes a dark turn. DBS had hired Goldman Sachs as their financial advisor. Goldman Sachs is the gold standard of Wall Street, but their standard proved to be a poison in the Singaporean context. To convince international investors that the DBS bid was superior, Goldman Sachs produced a report. This report would become one of the most famous blunders in financial history. It wasn't just critical, it was patronizing. The report claimed that a UOB-OUB merger would be disrupted by decision paralysis and infighting. It went further, suggesting that OUB shareholders should chastise their board for choosing face over value maximization. The warning here is vital. If you ignore the cultural context of your audience, your best arguments will be used as weapons against you. Goldman Sachs thought they were being truth-tellers. The Singaporean banking community thought they were being arrogant foreigners. The brain hates abstract explanations, but it understands an insult perfectly. When the Goldman Sachs report hit the desks of the OUB board, the cognitive load was simple. They are calling us incompetent. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about national pride. The report struck a raw nerve. UOB and OUB didn't just ignore it. They filed complaints with the MAS and threatened legal action. The report backfired so badly that the chairman of DBS, S. Danabalan, a man known for his extreme calm, was reportedly very angry and upset. He realized that his own advisors had destroyed the bridge he was trying to cross. Forget everything you know about corporate apologies. Usually, they are vague and hidden in the back of a report. Not this time. DBS was forced to do something unprecedented. They took out full-page advertisements in the Straits Times. They didn't just apologize, they essentially surrendered. They stated that the Goldman Sachs report did not reflect the way DBS does things. They withdrew every offending statement. And, as a final act of penance, they paid 1 million Singapore dollars each to UOB and OUB to be distributed to charities. DBS had to pay 2 million Singapore dollars just to get back to zero. The trust had collapsed. The warning had closed. If you skip the cultural step, your money is useless. While DBS was busy apologizing, Cho Yaw was consolidating. He didn't just stop at George Lien. He went after the institutional shareholders. He marketed the UOB-OUB merger as a Singaporean victory. He framed it as two local giants joining forces to keep the Singapore incorporated spirit alive, rather than a state-linked giant swallowing a private competitor. This is the contrarian idea. People think the biggest bank is always the safest. But Cho Yaw argued that the most aligned bank was the safest. He reduced the friction for shareholders by making the transition look seamless. He promised that the cultures would blend because they were both family-founded banks. In August 2001, the OUB shareholders met. The tension was at an all-time high. Would they take the DBS money, the safe, state-linked choice? Or would they go with Cho Yaw, the man who promised to keep their face intact? The result was a landslide. OUB chose UOB. This merger created a titan. At the time, it became the largest bank in Singapore by assets. It gave UOB the scale it needed to compete across Southeast Asia, particularly in Malaysia and Thailand. Cho Yaw had won. Not just with a bigger check, but with a better understanding of the human heart. The fallout of the OUB takeover wasn't just a change in bank logos, it was a permanent shift in how business was conducted in Southeast Asia. DBS, despite being the government favorite, learned a multi-million-dollar lesson. Efficiency is not a substitute for empathy. If you treat people like entries on a spreadsheet, they will find a way to make the math fail you. You'd think in a $10 billion deal, the most professional and clinical side would win. But the clinical side, represented by Goldman Sachs, was the very thing that triggered the threat response in the OUB board. By trying to be the smartest people in the room, they became the most expensive liability. Cho Yaw passed away in February 2024 at the age of 95. He left behind a bank that had grown from 75 branches to over 500, with assets ballooning from 2.8 billion Singapore dollars to over 250 billion Singapore dollars. But of all his deals, the acquisitions of Chung Kia Bank, Far Eastern Bank, and Westmont Bank, the OUB takeover, remains his masterpiece. Why? Because it was the moment he proved that simple language and human connection are the ultimate forms of authority. While the smartest guys in the room were using jargon to prove their point, Cho Yaw was using a handshake to build an empire. He understood that while numbers provide the what, emotions provide the why. So, what is the ultimate takeaway? The next time you are in a high-stakes situation, whether it's a job interview, a business deal, or a simple argument, remember the OUB saga. Don't be a bonsai. Recognize when your environment is too small for your ambition. Watch your face. Never win a logical argument at the cost of someone's dignity. Beware the Goldman Sachs trap. Arrogance is a tax that you pay in lost opportunities. Now you know why the biggest bank takeover in Singapore's history wasn't decided by a calculator, but by a personal visit. DBS had the logic. UOB had the story. The tiger of UOB is gone, but the empire he built by understanding the human brain still stands tall in the center of Singapore's financial district. The bonsai finally outgrew its pot, but it did so by keeping its roots intact. Now you know exactly why the DBS bid never stood a chance, and how Cho Yaw used the personal touch to win the $10 billion war.